Hi, I'm Kevin, and welcome back to My Mentor. We're very lucky to be talking to Thieu, who recently graduated from Stanford, is a budding neuroscientist, and the youngest person ever to win College Jeopardy. So Monica, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So we're just going to jump right into this, and I'm really interested in your College Jeopardy experience and what that was like, because I feel like many people might not think that they could actually go out and do what you did and even try to win College Jeopardy. So can you talk about that experience?
I mean, I guess the big thing is just that you aren't born knowing everything, and so like by nature, trivia is something that is very, very learnable. In my case, I was very lucky in that I was a huge nerd when I was younger. I still am. But like I would read like nonfiction history books when I was little for fun, which is not something that normal people do. Mm-hmm. But because of that, I guess I was just like exposed to a lot more just like knowledge-y things when I was younger. And so I just collected them. And by the time I got to like being college age, then I knew a lot of things. So I think a lot of it is just like exposing yourself to just a lot of information and just like looking at it in a way that's meaningful. Like if you're really interested in it, you'll learn it. If you have to learn it for a class and you're not so interested in it, then maybe that's an issue. But I think always finding something about it that's like really intrinsically interesting to you is the key.
Mm-hmm. So there's one thing about learning and memory, but also accessing it. I mean, and I'm not talking from experience. I was never on College Jeopardy, but accessing it super quickly, right? And I don't know if you could shed light on some of that and how, even though you have the information, some people, when they're put under that level of pressure, can't actually access it right away. So is that something that you practiced? And if so, how did you actually develop that type of skill?
I guess for me, like I've always been the kind of person who blurts things out. I got that on my report card every single year in elementary school. Tell Monica not to blurt things out so often in class. But it's useful in like a competition context because like the goal is to just like do that quickly. And so like I'm lucky in that I'm a fast reader, which is also something that you can learn, but I read really quickly. So what happens, like for example on Jeopardy, is you see the clue pop up at the same time as Alex Trebek is reading it. Mm-hmm. And then you can't start to buzz in to say the answer until after Alex Trebek is done reading. But if you're still trying to think of the answer by the time you're trying to buzz, that's too many things for you to handle because you have to put one part of your mind on pressing the thing as hard as you can and one part of your mind on actually like searching for the answer. Mm-hmm. So what most people do, like I do this, people that I talk to will do this, is read through the answer on the screen, hold the answer that you think it is in your mind, and then only just listen until you can start to press the button. Mm-hmm. And so you already know what you're going to say by the time it's time to answer. And so in that sense, being a fast reader is really useful because it seems like a really short time, but like when you're living in the thinking world, a few seconds is actually like not that bad. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, sometimes like you might unfortunately buzz in and then just suddenly be at a loss, or you might get it and then suddenly like 3 seconds later it feels like an eternity, but then you've got it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is just read quickly and don't think that it's a short amount of time because it's really not. Mm-hmm.
So I would say then, aside from your superior memory, even just the speed at which you can link all this stuff together, it's just also clearly one of your superpowers is multitasking and then filtering. So you can take in all the sensory inputs, Alex reading, or Alex actually speaking, you reading. You also have, it's filmed in a live studio audience, right? So you're filtering out all the other people and their stares, and you can actually channel that information to access it really quickly and press the button right at the right moment. Is that accurate?
Luckily, they do a really, really fastidious job of telling everyone in the audience to be very quiet. Mm-hmm. I was yelled at for talking in the audience multiple times, so I would know. But yeah, I think a lot of it is also that multitasking is not like multitasking per se as it is task switching. So it's the ability to like start something, put it on pause, go to something and be able to come back and have that first mental process that you started be in the same place where you left it. Mm-hmm. So it's like you go to think of the answer, you think of the answer, you put that on pause, you go to listening mode, then you put that on pause, and you go to like button pressing mode, and then you come back to answer having mode, and you just sort of have to like be able to call on those processes and have nothing leak. Mm-hmm. which is difficult. I have
definitely.
experienced leakage many times in that sense, where you just suddenly, like, you've lost the answer.
Yeah.
But I find that that happens to me much more when I'm trying to remember where I put my keys.
I see.
And luckily less in the competition context.
So if there were people, watching that you could help mentor in terms of learning how to task switch, or, maybe they can only do one thing at a time, what type of strategies, or how would you advise them to develop that skill set?
I think for me, something that was really useful and something that continues to be useful is just like the idea of rehearsing something in your working memory. So it doesn't take like that much brain power to repeat like a phrase or a name over in your head over and over again. And then you can do a motor process like press, or maybe like listen. If you're not listening to actual words that he's saying, just listen to the sound of his voice. That itself takes up less processing power. So you can hear someone talking but not know what they're saying, and then just keep repeating that thing in your head. And so just like taking the bare minimum from each task that you need to be able to complete it, I think helps, because then it just like stresses your brain less.
So basically, in order to make the conglomeration of the process more efficient, you would also then potentially advise to learn each of those skill sets separately before you put it all together. So it would be more of a piecemeal. And in terms of working memory, what do you mean by working memory?
I guess the ability to just like have a specific mental task that you're doing and to focus on it, hold it in mind, manipulate it, basically just like do the thinking thing, as it were.
Do the thinking thing, as it were, in terms of what?
For example, like the act of searching for a piece of information in your brain, or the act of then holding that like name or phrase or date or place in your mind. You can do it by like saying it over and over again in your head, for example, which is something that I do a lot. So just like holding a piece of information for like immediate use, I guess, kind of.
Interesting. So I mean, even just hearing you talk about the process itself, it's amazing to me. It's fascinating just how your brain, like as you're speaking, I can see, you fully understand all the different working parts. And that's totally awesome. And that I don't think many people have that ability. So I think that's another one of your superpowers in terms of seeing your brain work and understanding and being able to actually manipulate it and even control it so much, especially in that high pressure situation, which I would love for you to talk about in the sense that, I don't know the whole story, but you paid your way through Stanford with the money that you won on College Jeopardy. So do you want to talk about that type of, for me, that seems like that level of pressure added on top of the high stress situation would impede most people's performance. So how did you kind of put all of that into perspective?
I think it would. When I was on the show, and in other contexts, for example, like I like to perform, and so for example, when I'm on stage, like in the moment, I can get very like tunnel vision-y, and so I found that I did get really, really nervous, like right before cameras would start rolling, they would start yelling like, all right, everyone, like be quiet, we're about to shoot, like the little red like about to go button is flashing on the cameras, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's about to happen. But like as soon as everything starts and you really have like one purpose, and that purpose is to play the game and the purpose is to win, everything just sort of dropped out of my mind, so I just didn't really have like the mental space to think about the fact that it was such a high stakes situation. So I think that helped me, and that I was able to just sort of like forget that I was supposed to be nervous. And then you can sort of like the adrenaline is still going, but then since you're lacking that sort of sense of I have something to be anxious about, the adrenaline then is just helping you like perform better, because that's one of the things that stress can do for you, is to like really improve your performance. So I think a big thing is like feeling the anxious feeling but not putting it with an anxious thought helped me like reap the benefits of it without feeling like negative.
Yeah, that's brilliant and insightful. So another way to put that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you basically suppressed the negative aspects of the physiological response of stress, and instead you use that fight or flight response, for lack of a better word or term, to actually channel and focus your attention towards the task at hand. And you basically suppressed everything else, focused on winning, and for the end goal of potentially, this money can pay for my education.
Yeah. I didn't really think about that part while I was in the moment. It was mainly just like, this is a game, it's really fun, I enjoy playing it. So I think that helps a lot. I have been in situations where if you're thinking about like how meaningful this is, like that honestly for me is just more reasons to feel stressed in a negative way. Whereas like I am a very, very competitive person. And so for me, like just the joy of getting to play was what was really like propelling me through on that like positive adrenaline thing. So like the negative psychological aspects just were not in my thoughts at that time.
But it still sounds like even though you are a competitive person, that you don't necessarily, like let's say you lost in College Jeopardy. So would that have actually ruined the entire process for you?
I'm thinking to the second time I went on the show, I did lose. I got out in the first round and I was really frustrated for probably that day because it was something that I like felt like, oh, if I had just gone back and like bet more money, I got that question right, I could have gone on. Like all I really wanted to do was play more. Yeah. And so that made me feel better about it because it was like, I will get to play Jeopardy at home on my TV ad infinitum. And so just like sort of reassessing like the negative feeling and being like, okay, like yes, I feel bad right now and it sucks and it'll be fine later. And so I could just sort of like not have anything to continue being stressed about. So just like letting it go at its own pace.
So is that something that you also use as a tactic in everyday life when dealing with, potentially, negative situation, that you can reframe it in a way that won't have a lasting effect or lasting negative effect, and you can actually build on?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like not getting as good of a grade on an assignment as you wanted to, or getting like rejected when you try to ask someone out. Honestly, like every single social sphere, like or work sphere or any sphere, something bad is going to happen to you. It always does. And it's like in your power to decide what you think about it. It's not always in your power to decide what you feel about it, but like the feelings will follow the thoughts. So I find that that's been really useful for me, just sort of like being aware of how I think about things, and then that helps my feelings like not take over.
Cool, interesting. The immediate thought I got from that was, and also linking to the process you described of being on Jeopardy, was you have this ability to filter out information, access the information you need at the right moment, at the right time. Typically, even when you lose, you had this similar tactic, even though you lost. So do you think that your generation right now actually has that ability more so than, let's say, my generation, in terms of I didn't have Twitter, I didn't grow up with Twitter, I didn't grow up with Facebook. So do you think that, you are more likely, and your contemporaries are more likely to have that ability to access that information quickly, filter out other information? And if you don't think that's true, how might you, educate other generations, other people, that they could actually have similar tactics as you?
I mean, like, I can just say right off the bat that I am a very, very distractible person in 99% of contexts. Like, it's new thoughts are popping into my head all the time, and I actually have a lot of trouble filtering. But when I do have like a situation where I have like a really, really salient goal, for example, like if I'm playing a game, then I don't get distracted. I just want to win. So that's probably the main context where I'm able to like turn on, I guess, like the laser filtering thing. But I do kind of feel like maybe like more people are tending towards like the super distractible kind of end of the spectrum. Obviously, I don't know if it's like us, like I listen to music all the time, like when I'm on my phone, when I'm reading something on my computer, when I'm reading an actual book, like doing anything. And so like maybe like these competing streams of information are confusing my brain. Maybe they're not. I think I've always been really distractible. So I can't necessarily say that, because people are like doing everything with Twitter and Facebook and everything all the time, that they are going to like develop this intense distractibility that I experience. But it's possible that it brings it out in people. I think a big thing for me is like observing the context where I am really distractible and observing the context where I can focus. And a lot of times I wish I were less distractible. And so trying to like pull things from when I'm in the zone to take them for when I'm out of the zone.
Right. But even despite your distractibility, you still have a really amazing ability to actually filter information, right? So it's kind of a push-pull, right? So you might be distractible, but you can still filter, if you think of attentional spotlights, right?
Yes.
And if you are distractible, you're describing that, tunnel vision, right? And so you might be drawn to something and distracted, but then if that's, let's say, more important to the game you're playing or the assignment you're doing, you zone in on that, and that actually, it gets amplified, that your attention amplifies. So, I mean, do you want to talk? To me, that seems like one of your another superpower in the sense of, zoning in on the important information and then dealing with that. And then even though you might be distractible again, going to the next thing, zoning in on that and doing it. And so if you think of that strategy and then you take out the word game and you put, let's say, or add the word game to game of life, how might you actually apply that in everyday life? Or now that you just finished undergrad, you're going to be moving on. And so how might you use that same type of strategy, but applying it to decisions that you're going to make throughout life?
I think probably, as you mentioned, the push-pull, the biggest thing is just like finding the balance of when to zone in, when not to. Because I've obviously had experiences like in both modes where like I'm really zoned in on something and then I've forgotten to eat dinner and suddenly it's 11 o'clock and I'm just like, my schedule's totally thrown off. Or on the other hand, when I forget where I put my keys, literally 15 seconds after I put them down, and then I spend 5 minutes digging around my house, and then I'm late, and then everything's terrible. So a big thing is just like being able to observe like, when should I be zoning in? How zoned in should I be? Because sometimes you need to be able to be pulled out of that mode if something important is going to happen. Or like, when should I zone in more? Because you're going to suffer a lot if you lose that information that you were trying to hold in mind. And so I think a big thing for me is just like making sure that I am aware of like how much attention is the best amount of attention to be paying at this time, and how can I get to that point.
Interesting. So let's go back to pressure.
Okay.
So now you have this ability with the push-pull relationship between distractibility and your ability to filter and attend. And then you add, pressure on top of that, and then the more and more pressure that again, your generation is put under to succeed in different ways and, maybe be the next, Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. So how do you deal with that type of pressure, especially, you came off this success in College Jeopardy, then you go to an undergrad institution. That's a huge, huge transition. You go from, wanting to win, a lot of money to worrying about grades. Now you're going from worrying about grades to, potentially doing something, I don't know, what's your next step? Yeah, and so how do you deal with that type of pressure and the high stakes that I think your generation is under?
Because I think there's two different kinds of pressure. There's like the in the moment, like very specific, like now you're going to be stressed now, like you're on stage, you're on screen, whatever's happening, like you need to execute at this very second. And then there's like, I feel like what you're talking about is the more protracted kind of like, oh, what am I going to do with my life? Like I always feel like I need to like achieve more, do better, but on a longer scale. And I think that the former kind can be really useful. Obviously it can shut people down. It has shut me down. But the latter kind, I always just try and kind of like not set my own standards for myself too low or too high. Like when I came to Stanford, actually, I didn't really tell many people that I was on College Jeopardy until they would like find out for some reason or another. And then at that point, I felt like I had established myself as like myself, where like I am my accomplishments, but I don't want to necessarily be defined by my accomplishments. Like I can keep doing things at a certain pace, but it's like regression to the mean happens. Like you have a great day, you win College Jeopardy, and then like you spill ice cream on yourself. So I think the big thing is just like people I talk to can get really hung up on like the great things that happen to people, the great things that people achieve, and then like forget that off days, off weeks, off months happen as well. And so I find that just like not hanging up on the highs helps me like stay more stable, I guess, in my pursuit of whatever is going to happen in my life.
So you have more of a balanced thought process. It seems that you're not going to latch on to your successes, and instead you're going to just, find your way, go with the flow, do whatever, whatever your passion is, whatever you're motivated to do. And in this case, you're now pursuing neuroscience as a degree. So were you drawn to neuroscience because it seems like, again, one of your superpowers is really understanding the workings of your own brain. And so did that draw you to neuroscience, or what in particular really drew you to neuroscience?
I think that's pretty much it. I just like, humans are amazing and complicated. And sometimes when you're reading the science news, for example, like New Horizons just went to Pluto. They just sent a thing to Pluto and they got it so close that it was like driving your car from New York to San Francisco and landing within 3 feet of the parking spot that you picked in New York. So that is incredible. Like, people are doing such amazing things, and like, as a budding scientist, I sometimes got the feeling that it was like, what is there that's left to discover? Is everything already been figured out already? And at least in neuroscience, like, I'm constantly learning every day, and it's so amazing that no, not everything has been figured out yet, and we're constantly like learning, revising what we already think we know, like, and just, I feel like there's so much more that can be learned, and I feel like that there's something that I can contribute.
Excellent. It's a great answer. And as your brain is firing so strongly right now and you're getting so excited, I'm also wondering, are you able to turn your brain off to go to sleep?
Yes, I'm a very sleepy person. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Oh, really? Okay. So even though, as you're talking about all the different links that you make and all your different thought processes, you have no trouble just turning it off, not looping or thinking about anything that stressed you out that day, and you can just sleep right through it and as soon as your head hits a pillow.
Not as soon as often, it's probably pretty bad. Like, my pre-sleep routine generally involves like playing some mindless puzzle game, like Candy Crush, until I just sort of like get into a space where I tire myself out. But I don't generally find that I ruminate about things a lot when I go to bed. I'm like really excited to spend like deep time acquainting with my bed, not being interrupted with my thoughts.
Okay, that's also a very good answer. And so one of the other things that I was thinking about is that we were talking about the fact that you are left-handed, and so your brain actually is only representative of 10% of the population, roughly. And so when you walk around the world, do you wonder, how your brain is different or how your brain is similar to other left-handed people? Do you feel like, why is this world right-handed, or why is a majority of the world right-handed? And just speak a bit about that experience. And
something that I've noticed has been happening to me a lot more frequently over the past few years, especially at Stanford, is that I've just been like running into way more left-handed people than one would usually run into. So like in my singing group, like we had, I think, like 5 left-handed people out of a group of 12, which is way more than 10%. Or like the last 3 people I've dated have been left-handed, which is also really weird. I don't know how that happened. And I think maybe just at Stanford, so maybe there's something about the environment that like attracts more left-handed people. I don't know. I'm really interested to find that out, because a lot of people can say things about like, oh, you're left-handed, you must be creative, or like, oh, you're left-handed, you must be smart. And that's weird, because I don't want anyone to say that I should be something because I write with one hand. I don't know how it happened. I just picked up the pencil with that hand and off I went. And so I guess something that I'm really interested in is like, honestly, what kind of actual maybe like personality or thinking traits are actually associated with being left-handed, and whether they have like a genetic cause that goes with that, or is it because like left-handed people all feel put upon in school because they have to write the other way, and so they like develop some trait because they were really frustrated in kindergarten, which I was.
Well, thanks, Monica. I think it's a perfect way to end with the left-handed brain, and I really just want to summarize your combo superpower. So as we spoke about in the beginning, I think that you have that superior memory ability. You also have that ability to filter out information despite distractibilities and really zone in on what's important, and you can really have your attentional focus on that. And you have this really uncanny ability to understand your amazingly complex and quick-moving brain that you share in common with a lot of other people, even others that aren't left-handed. So I thank you for being here with this fascinating conversation. And for those of you watching, again, a reminder that the brain you have is not the brain that you're stuck with. Thanks.